Hey there and welcome to Matt's Garage. So today we're working on a 2011 Hyundai Santa Fe with the 3.5 liter V6 engine in it, and it has an oil leak from the oil pressure sensor. So we're going to be replacing that sensor today. This video should apply to any Hyundai Santa Fe or Kia Sorento that has a 3.5 liter V6 engine in it. They should all be the same. They all have the oil pressure sensor, unfortunately, way down under this whole intake and everything. This has all got to come off, and it's way down there in the valley. So I'm going to show you how you know if you have this problem for sure, and then we're going to go through the steps, step by step, removing what needs to be removed, getting to the sensor, and changing the sensor. So I went with this aftermarket sensor. When there's something like this where the original one's leaking, I'm not too inclined to go get a Hyundai part to fix it, because it might leak rather quickly too. And sometimes these aftermarket ones are upgraded so that they don't end up leaking. Anyways, that's what the sensor looks like. It just threads right in. And I notice it has quite a big hole in here, so you want to be cautious with this. This is not a leak you really want to push too far. Some sensors have a really tiny pinhole in here, but this one has such a large hole in it. I don't know if the factory one's going to be the same when we get it out, but if it is, and this center came completely out, that could run your engine out of oil in a matter of, a couple minutes. So you don't want to push this leak too far, and I've heard they can leak pretty fast. Mine's just dripping right now, but I didn't drive it very long after I noticed the leak. So if you have this problem, the first thing you're probably going to notice is under the vehicle, you're going to notice a drip. So this vehicle's actually been parked here for a few days, and you can see that drip right there. And I'll just get you under here so you can see where it's actually dripping down from. Okay, so you can see most of it's dripping right off the corner of the skid plate there. But then you'll come over here, and this is important to note. It's dripping off the transmission case, and it drips down here between the transmission and the engine, just the same as if you had a rear main seal leak. And I've heard that these leaks can often be misdiagnosed by a hasty mechanic who just looks here and assumes that it's the rear main seal on the engine leaking. So we're going to come up top, and I'll show you the real problem and how you tell the difference between a rear main seal leak and what we actually have going on here. Okay, so if you see that oil underneath, you want to come in here and you want to look down in here, and it's not going to show real good on camera yet. We'll get this air box and everything pulled out, but the whole top of the transmission is oily. And if you look down in there, all in the valley, the whole valley of this engine is flooded with oil, and it's pouring out onto the top of the transmission and running down everywhere. So This could be an easy one to misdiagnose, but it's also an easy one to confirm by coming up here and looking for this oil. Now, you would want to check around your valve cover gaskets and stuff and make sure that the oil's not coming from them. But being that they're kind of farther out there, the oil would probably be running down one side or the other rather than coming right out the middle. You could also have a leaking oil filter housing, but you can clearly see this one's nice and dry. That's why it's important to dry stuff off when you're doing an oil change, so that later it makes diagnosing stuff easier. But if this was all oily, you might want to clean it off and confirm that the oil's not in fact coming from that before you go tearing the top of the engine apart here. But of course, I've already double checked all those things. I'm very confident that it is in fact the pressure sensor. And so we're going to proceed with this assembly here. I'm just going to suggest that you could disconnect your negative battery terminal. I'm not going to, at least not yet. I don't think there's any power wires that I have to take off that aren't like a sealed plug, if you know what I mean. Now, this is something that would be good to blow off or wipe off. This one's pretty clean, so we're just going to get started here. I'm going to pull that plug off. Just use my clip pliers. Get this clip. I can use that to get this little spring clamp too. Gonna be 10mm on the clamp there. Another line down here. It's a spring clamp. I'm going to try pulling the cover off and see if I can get the other end of it. So I'm just going to pull the engine cover up. There we go. So you can see it just, those rubbers push over those little posts there. So just pull up evenly, and the same thing when you put it back down, just do it evenly, don't twist it around, and you should be fine. Okay, so we're going to have to get in here and clean. There's a lot of dust and silt in here. And now that you have a better look at your valve covers, you can make sure they're not leaking in here. So this was the other end of that hose, so we'll undo it right here from the valve cover. Actually, before I break that free from there, I'm just going to go around here and wipe and vacuum over this all. So I just have to remove this harness here, and there's 3 10mm bolts. So I'm just going to impact them off, and that can flip to the side. There's a blue safety tab on this plug you got to pull, I guess. Okay, I wish I could tell you how I get that safety tab out of there, but I just pried up inside the connector and got it off with the safety tab still there. Okay, so you gotta get all these wires off all here so that this can come back, and you probably don't have to, but I unplugged the injectors too, just so it really pulls back out of my way. So now I'm gonna get these 3 clips out of here and finish getting that airbox assembly out of there. That's gonna give us a whole lot more room there. So with these kind of clips, you want to gently loosen the center of them first. If you push down too hard, they just won't come up because they're just plastic. Sometimes you can even, so you can get them out with your fingers if you loosen them properly. There, that's off of there. So we'll just work the coupler off the throttle body here. Give it a little twist and a little pull. So that's off. And then, oh okay, it looks like there's some 10mm fasteners holding the box down. I forgot to pivot the camera, but I just worked the intake hose off, and I discovered there's some 10mm that actually hold it down. Okay, 3 fasteners. There's just one back here in the corner. Okay, it should pull up now. Just be careful, there's a wire down here that's snagged around it. And these hoses. You can get a really good look at how extensive our leak is now. Next is this upper cover has to come off. And it looks to me like maybe I can just flip it up so that I can leave those lines and wires and everything attached to it, because I only have to get down right in here. So if I can strap it up to the bottom of the hood there or something like that, and then gain access. So these are just a bunch of 10mm fasteners around here, and you just kind of want to make sure you're not getting dirt into things as you go here. There's a nut here. I think there's probably a support bracket back here, so I'm just going to look around back there. Yeah, 14mm. And then there's a little bracket here with a 10mm that holds the power steering line, I believe. That one's 12mm. Do a little... Yeah, I think she's loose. So I'm going to get a bungee cord ready so I can strap this up. That is my plan. Does look like I have to take the fuel line off the fuel rail here, because the whole fuel rail's got to lift out of here. I think that's the only thing though. Maybe I should just unplug these for the time it takes. I think I'm gonna just give me more room to work. Okay, so those are unplugged. So it's a 10mm on the fuel rail, and you want to be careful to kind of support it as you're breaking it loose, so you're not pulling on the line too much. Now if you have just run the engine, you might want to let it cool off before you undo this, because it is going to spill some fuel on top the engine here when I release this. One other thing you should do at this point is put some shop towels down here to keep anything out of the intake. There we go. So be aware of that. There's just going to be a little fuel sprays out of there. Not much you can really do to catch it. So I'll just give you a quick overview of what we're working with here. I just have it strapped up to there. So however it works, as long as you've got enough room to work in there, that's all you need. But we got to get that row of bolts down there, and you can see those ones are Allen keys, the two center ones, and the two outer ones look to be either 13 or 14mm nuts, probably 14. Okay, so those Allen keys down in there, they are 6mm, and if you have like the socket style Allen keys, they don't actually fit in there. It's really a tight space, so what you need is one of these traditional styled ones, and you put the long part down in there, and it fits to right there. Get it turned right so you can get a just whatever size socket will fit over the end of the Allen key, and a little extension to give you some leverage. Make sure you hold down firmly on it. Really firmly, and apparently it requires quite a good pull on there. Okay, so these corner fasteners here, they are 12mm nuts on them. And another 12mm right here in this corner. Okay, and then I'll just finish getting all these Allen bolts out, and I'll just leave them in the housing, and then that way we don't get confused. We're just going to try and pull this all up as a unit now. Again, hopefully not contaminating things too badly here. I'm just going to set that over there because there's still a wire connected to it. I've got to set it somewhere, so I might as well just set it there. So this is our sensor that we got to change, but first I'm going to get paper towel on all these ports. A little dust did drop in there, but after I take the paper towel back out, I'm going to go ahead and vacuum the ports. So here's an overview of everything again, and again these are reusable gaskets, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to replace them. So this is the part that we're actually aiming to replace right there. You can see it's definitely leaking, and the valley's all full of oil down there. So you have to work around this coolant pipe here. It's quite annoying, and I believe that's 22mm, that sensor there. So we're going to get in there and do our best, and I'll show you how I do it, I guess. Just reach under with my finger and depress that tab, and push it off with my other finger. There we go, very easy. Okay guys, here is my solution. I don't have a wrench that will fit in there, but this can't be that tight. So we're going to try these channel locks, just like this. We'll have to be really careful putting a new one in, but getting this one out, it doesn't matter as long as I get it out. Okay guys, there we go. Got the old one out. Just like I said, I was able to grab it with the channel locks. I'm not actually sure how you get in there with a wrench or a ratchet or a socket or anything like that, but I grabbed it like that. And of course you can't contact the plastic part of it when you put the new part in, so you have to be extra careful doing that. But that does work pretty good with the channel locks there. Okay, so here is the port, and before you put the new one in, the only thing you want to make sure to do is make sure you're not introducing dirt in here. So it's already got thread sealant on there, you don't have to add any. Just make sure you get it started in there straight, because both this and that are aluminum, so it would be very easy to cross thread something. Just hold it in with your one finger and sort of rotate it on the end of that finger. You'll see what I mean when you get to it. You just have to hold it in against the port with your finger like that, and then use your other finger in here, and you'll be able to spin it, work it in. And this doesn't have to be extremely tight, but you know, you don't want it to leak, so you want it sealed on those threads. You want it snug down for sure, but keep in mind that it is quite a small fitting. And then we just have to plug in the sensor wire. Now the sensor wire might be soaked in oil, so you might want to flush it out with brake clean first. I believe I'm going to do that because you could have a faulty signal if there's oil in that connector there. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm just fishing that sensor wire up out of there, and you can see it's really soaked in oil. And so I'm just going to take a shot of brake clean. Rinse that out, and then I'll just give that a minute to evaporate out of there, and then we'll plug it back in. Make sure you route it back down under this pipe when you plug it in. That's how it goes. If you don't do that, it might interfere with something. And so here's what I'm talking about. I went and just got a Ford sensor. You see how small that hole is compared to the Hyundai one? So to me, that's kind of a bad design. So the plug can plug in pretty much any way, but it's got to match the sensor. So there's a little bump on the side of the sensor, and that lines up with where the this little push tab is on the plug. So as long as that lines up and you get a positive clip when you put it together here. There we go. Took me a second to get it lined up, and I just double checked to make sure it was clipped, and it is. And the wires routed as it was, so everything should be good. Just going to clean up in the valley here a bit. If I don't, it's going to stink like oil forever. It smells like it has an oil leak, so I'm just going to flood that with brake clean and hope most of it runs out, and then I'll get in there and absorb the rest with some shop towels. This evaporates really quickly, so it's not a big deal to get it on everything. But the fumes are pretty bad, so ventilate. There we go, we're absorbing that up out of there slowly. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I skipped a few steps ahead because I figure you guys can pretty well figure out for yourselves how to clean this up however you like. I probably get a little more carried away than most would. So those paper towels I put in there, they're kind of the last thing that comes out. I took them out at one point and wiped all these surfaces with brake clean. Same with all these gaskets, which you really should replace these. I would recommend replacing them, even though I'm not. And then I vacuumed like everything in here just so nothing was falling in there. And then the last step was to go through, and I actually sucked the paper towels back out of there with the vacuum, and then stuck the crevice tool down in there and sucked in there to make sure no dirt was left in there around the valves. And I also cleared all these holes with an air gun, and maybe a little controversial, but I did put a drop of oil down each one as well, so they'll be lubricated. And yes, the torque specs are probably for a dry torque, so you might want to reduce the torque spec a little if you're also putting oil there. I just really don't want these threads snagging, because as you can see, this is a very small ear they put on here, and if you've got debris in your threads and you tighten that down, or you cross thread it or anything like that, it's going to bust out that aluminum, and you're going to be looking at tearing this engine down and putting new cylinder heads on it. And basically you can line up these studs on the front is going to be the way to go. And if you left all the other fasteners in like I did, it should just drop down there like that, and then just kind of rock it down into place, and you'll feel it seat up. When you can't rock it around anymore, it's going to be seated up. So now we're going to go and tighten all those down, and then we'll run around here with the vacuum once more, vacuum all this up and suck all these plugs out, wipe all these surfaces, and then we'll get this back together, plug everything in, and we're pretty well done. Don't tighten anything down yet, just snug everything with your fingers kinda. So the rest of them are Allen keys, and unfortunately I believe you can get the socket with the long key on it. So unfortunately I'm really not going to be able to torque these in any accurate manner. I guess I could cut this off and put this in a equivalent size socket. That would be one way to go, but I don't think I'm going to do that to my Allen key. Okay guys, so according to the diagram, I'm finding those Allen keys are 19.5 to 23.1 foot-pounds, and the two studs with nuts on them are 13.7 to 17.4 foot-pounds. And then for the upper intake, this piece where it goes down into the brass there, those Allen keys are 7.23 to 8.68 foot-pounds, and there's also studs on those, so those are gonna be 13.7 to 17.4 foot-pounds. I would generally start in the middle and work my way out. That's normally how you torque it up. Okay, so I got my 15 foot-pounds set on there for the studs, but we're going to go ahead, like I say, we're going to start from the middle fasteners, and I'm basically going to go as tight as I can go with that little, and then these corner ones, and I'm not going to go all the way till it clicks right yet. I'm going to try not to. Okay, same thing over here, just about half of the spec is what I'm aiming for right now, till I get the rest of them where they need to be. Okay, so the whole manifold is sort of done halfway. So now what I'm going to do to try and get a feel for the amount of torque that I want to be putting on those, these are a little lower spec on the corner, so I'll go ahead and bring them up to the click on the wrench. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using this handle on the Allen key, so to get an accurate feel, I'm just going to pull from the same point on my torque wrench, and then it'll give me a feel for how hard I have to pull. So there we go, about that hard, which is a pretty hard pull from this leverage point on the wrench. Okay, so now I'm going to try and muscle memory that torque spec. Remember, these ones are a little higher spec. Now I'll do this corner one. Okay, so I'd say that's all torqued, so we're going to take the vacuum this and wipe it with a little brake clean and just proceed. Now would be a good time to plug your injector harness back in so that you don't forget that. So make sure you get a nice positive click on each one, and if you're having trouble getting one in, it could be that their dirt has fallen into that plug, so you could clear them with an air gun and it would solve that issue. Again, it's a good idea to replace this gasket. I highly recommend it. I am a fan of lubrication on threads, so that's up to you whether you want to follow suit. But I'm just gonna, this is all I'm gonna do, is this. And then for the, just like that too, it doesn't take much, but. Okay, so we're just gonna release our bungee cord. And then I just want to wipe right where the bungee cord was, where I couldn't before. Now we're ready to gently set this back down in place. There's one on, there's the other on. It was a little stubborn to get into position. Some stuff is fighting me, I guess. Make sure that O-ring's clean. We're just going to put the fuel line on there. So if you're having trouble putting that O-ring in, you can just put a little oil on it or a little Vaseline. I'll just put a little oil on there and it'll slip right together. There we go. Just make sure you check that for leaks. Get these two started. Okay, and for these, I think a nut driver is the way to go. I'm just going to go as tight as I can go with a nut driver. But first I'm going to do the same thing and snug them all down. And then don't forget your bolt at the back. You got a bolt on each corner at the back to hold it all steady. But I think you want to get these torqued down first. So now this wiring harness goes back into position. Okay, so we're just working our way along. We got these two plugs plugged back in. Those little clips plugged back in. Our injector harness plugged back in. We got our fuel line back on, 2 10mm nuts on that. Now we're just going to plug in this harness here. So as you can see, these plugs over here couldn't be simpler because they're color coded. Okay, I just finished getting this bolt up, the supports on it. So there's a 12mm down here, and I got at it with that deep socket. You're able to get in behind the lines nicely. And then back here, there's a 10mm just holding that bracket for the hose. And then if you come around here, this is the tricky one. There's a 14mm bolt back down here, and you can only really feel for it, but if you trace the wires from this yellow plug right here, the head of that bolt is just above the wires where they wrap around. Back there, there's a little steel bracket, and that 14mm goes right into there. And what I like to do when I'm tightening those bolts is just put a little bit of upward pressure on the back of the intake, because you've got the whole weight of it hanging off of these bolts, and those are supposed to take that pressure away. So I like to just put a little upward pressure as I'm snugging those bolts down. Not a whole bunch to where you'd have the reverse problem, but you want it to be fully supporting that intake. And so we're just going to move on here and do the intake cleaning, and we'll just get that carbon goop cleaned out of there. You can also see I've got all the oil off the top of the transmission and everything there, so everything's ready to go back together here. And we're going to proceed with getting that air box in, and then we'll get the engine cover clipped on. So here we go, putting the air box back in, and of course a good time to check or change your air filter, but I have just done that personally. So there we go. Once we get that boot down there, it kind of just falls into position. Just make sure you're not crimping any wires or hoses in the process. I'm going to get that boot all the way slid on before I do anything else. And it actually has two little tabs that stick out here, and they correspond with a bump, a high spot in the housing there. You'll clearly see what I mean. And you work that in so the tabs go on each side. It kind of notches in there. And then this clamp, make sure that this clamp is kind of centered up on everything so that it clamps evenly. Just make sure that you don't have the hose crimped over on the bogging edge. Run your hands around and feel the cuff of it, that it's not wrinkled over anywhere. You don't have to go crazy tight on this. As long as you can't move it, if you can't rotate it on there, then it should be sealed. And we got a hose here. Slide on. And do up that spring clamp. You might need pliers. I just used my fingers. And then we got a hose down here that goes to our valve cover. Slide it on. And make sure you don't forget this wire. It kind of flops down out of the eyesight, so you might. But this wire is what plugs into this connector on your airbox, and then there's a little retainer clip there. Now there's 3 10mm fasteners that hold the box in position. Okay, so we're just getting ready to clip our engine cover back on, and you can see these are all kind of dry and crusty in there, so we'll just take a little Vaseline and just goop a little bit in each one. Okay, so the only one thing we want to do is pay super close attention to that fuel line, and we also want to cycle the key on and off a couple times before starting the engine for the first time, because that fuel line is going to be full of air there, so you don't want the engine sputtering or whatever on startup. You just want to purge that air through before you start it. So like I say, we're going to just cycle the key to on, and actually I'm going to do this 3 times, and then I'm going to go check for any fuel leaks before I even try to start it, because it should be building fuel pressure right now. It doesn't appear to be leaking, but check real good, and check after the engine comes back up to temperature. You'd get a surging idle if you had an intake leak, and you would also have a check engine light. You can see it's nice and steady. It's still just warming up, so it should idle down here in a minute. Okay, well that's going to conclude this repair on this Hyundai 3.5 liter V6. This should be applicable to any Hyundai or Kia 3.5 V6, so I do hope you found the video helpful and informative. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have yourself a great day.